Next, we have one other additional special presentation. Our general manager, Friedel, is going to give us a quick year in review or 2021. So, Jim Friedel, take it away.
Yes, thank you, Chair, AKA Grandpa Nichols, since you have a great fan base back here. And I was telling them, just as I was about to start, the reason we do the year in review at the end of the year is obvious. It's the end of the year, but it's also the time we do thank our board chair for spending the whole year presiding over the board, showing up at all our events and presentations, and just generally being a leader and a visible face for the board. And your dad and grandpa did that so admirably this year. So as we get into the year in review, this is Doug's the chair, but it does take a whole team. So this is for everybody. So here we go. Generally, this is going to be in chronologic order, so it might bounce around from subject matter, but I'm going to try to stick to generally, a chronologic thing as I go through the slides. So set the stage. If you remember in, January timeframe, we thought the vaccines were coming out and everything was going to be just fine, and we were going to be back to normal pretty soon. But we started off early in January with a fire, and the Herbs Road fire, a smaller fire, but a fire and scary situation nonetheless for especially the nearby residents. But we did have to open a shelter. COVID kept going, and we call this the wall of pain because it's in our office, and Jody Dixon makes signs, and I think we got to something close to 5,000 signs over the course of the pandemic, and we trying to keep track of all the different signs that would have to go to at the 60 different parks and facilities, and we just started to use this wall as a way to keep track of everything. And so we were still going through all that. Zoom meetings were sort of here to stay, and not only CRPD, but almost everybody was starting to use Zoom as a way to get in meetings. So then early, the vaccination centers started opening, and we did one with the county at the Global Adult Center. That's actually downtown LA in the way background. So that's Dodger Stadium. So that's, remember the giant mass vaccination shelters and stuff's opening up. So we aren't going to be deterred. And I think the philosophy of this board, the drive of the staff, their desire to have the ability to continue to create community is, even though there were all sorts of different rules. If you remember, we had, limited gatherings. You could only get together for these specific industry specific purposes. There was this color tiered system on how the rules would keep changing. And so our staff throughout the early part of this year kept changing, kept morphing, kept doing whatever they could possibly do to make something happen in the ever-changing environment. So, stuff like the Cupid cargrams that we did, or the You've Been Egged event around Easter, and the drive-ins for the, kind of in lieu of gathering. And then of course, everyone was doing virtual, and people started certainly growing weary of that. And so if we could do something in the rules and still, get together, we basically put on our cultural unit, Scott right there, figured out ways to get fully, musical productions done within the guidelines and rules. So there's an image of a theatrical production rehearsal where there's singing and dancing and all stuff. It's a video, but I don't have the video, but it's fantastic what those guys were able to do. And it's not going. Maybe it's because it is a video. So you can only imagine this is like all together on the stage when it's in real life, but in rehearsal, you have to do that, go through that stuff. And then, we still kept our traditional unplugged events and that kind of thing. And we'd come up with scavenger hunts for folks to do as a family. One of the things I like about that image on the left, you have to kind of look at those leaves closely, but one of the kids put on there, when you don't have your electronics, when you can't be plugged in, what are you doing? And one kid wrote, play, bath, eat, play, bath, eat, play, bath, eat, play, bath, eat. So apparently that's what he does. I love that. and then kind of moving away from, a little bit away from the pandemic stuff, while the pandemic's going, we're still doing all the programs we're allowed to do. So 850 Warwick, really well-developed program. The owner of the building changed. And so we had to change as well because we no longer could use the facilities there to do the programming. We brought it in-house to the Conejo Community Center. We met with the community, went with the parents, let them know what was happening. We were able to do all sorts of stuff inside the center because other types of programming had been curtailed. And thankfully, Rochelle's staff was able to work with the school district, and now we're doing that program for the community at Acacia Elementary. And we continue to do it at the Conejo Creek condos, and they've even added a facility at the Shadows Apartments on Los Feliz. So it actually ended up being a blessing because we've actually expanded it and are now reaching out to even more kids. And our homework club is very closely, and Fun Fridays, very closely part of the Safe Passage umbrella of programming. And everybody knows Tim Hagel and all the hard work he does. So you can't go through a year in review without Tim. Then we get into some capital while everything else is going and the programming is resuming. We're doing new parks and playgrounds at Glenwood and new playground at Pepper Tree and a new playground at Wildwood Neighborhood Park. So Tom's folks are still working like crazy. The board and a committee of the board, talking to the city and working with city staff and park staff, approved a pretty complex and comprehensive real estate transaction. It was a property swap for Rancho Potrero and the library. We did some management and operational realignment with the city and approved some capital improvements so that the Rancho Potrero Equestrian Center can serve not only the boarders there, but also the community as a whole. So that's a fun thing. The Rasnows donated a big chunk of open space on Rasnow Peak and along the Los Robles Trail, and super generous donation. We're super grateful, and we haven't really had a chance to properly thank them yet. But one of the things that resulted in part of the agreement was that a section of the trail had to be realigned, and the Rangers did an incredible job realigning that trail. If you haven't been on the Los Robles Trail in a while, you've got to go. And so right around summer, June 21st, in fact, the centers were all able to reopen for gathering. So the rule was no longer you had to have some specific class or program or some public health order sanctioned, category of use that you were doing it. You could now resume what the community centers have been intended to be all along, is just a community drop-in gathering place. But just as that was happening, we started getting these incredible heat waves, and we were having to use the centers as cooling centers. So our board started saying, let's get out there and start meeting up. So we skipped the gratitude circle for a year, but thankfully we were able to reinstall that. And Karen, Steve, and Jim Gilmore, we got to recognize them. And then the summer concert returned, and I don't know if Tim was here, but I don't know if you can see that really well, but having to line the entire bowl area to maintain the public health distancing rules and et cetera, it makes lining a football field seem like nothing compared to what they had to do there. So that was, Tom's staff and Tim, and they did a great job. And thankfully, we only had to do that for the first concert, and the rest of the concerts returned to normal, and the board got to be up there and part of it. And of course, we resumed 4th of July fireworks again, and that was a ton of fun. The healing garden got great use. In July 6th, Sergeant Ron Helis's family was presented with the Congressional Badge of Bravery by Congresswoman Brownlee, and I know several of our board members were at that solemn but very important occasion. That's a very few people in the country have ever received that award. And then we started having, sort of normal things happening. The chamber's leadership, Conejo returned, and we got to put them on a bus and go around and see all the cool things that we have. During this time, we'd been reminding the state how much the Park District continued to do. And it was the recognition felt really good because Assembly Member Jackie Irwin and Senator Henry Stern were able to get a line item in the state budget for the Park District for 3.3 million, which was really important, really helpful, and it made it feel really good because the staff, the CRPD had done so much during the pandemic and had yet to receive COVID relief like so many others. And the rec staff, creative as always, having literally 5,000 people all touching different trucks and parts of trucks probably wasn't the best idea during the pandemic. So we did a parade style, which was a totally cool way to do it. In fact, it seemed almost popular enough that we might mix it up or incorporate it into other things in the future. And, throughout the year, we had a holiday picnic today and, got to say thank you to the employees, but this was the year to thank the employees for just being over and above the whole year. And they did get some recognition outside of the district, but it's really nice, the board, to recognize employees for doing all sorts of different things. And then we specifically used July and early part of August to really visibly recognize employees. And that was through somewhat of a competitive acknowledgement process. And, that was a lot of fun. And we do have our annual part-time service awards. So again, this was one of those years where you just have to say our employees went above and beyond and can't thank them enough. That said, you've heard in the news probably, hiring folks is actually a bit of a challenge, more so than I've, can recall in the last 10 years. We haven't had the degree of effort to try to get folks. So those of you watching at home, we are hiring all the time. So go on our at www.crpd.org, and under HR, you can find all sorts of good jobs available.
And those in the audience too.
That's right. Do I have a video embedded in here? I want to get out of here if there is a video. Yeah, we don't need the video. Oops. I think I pulled this off Facebook, so. Oh, you have to reset it? Can you just launch it on the slide after? Up higher, up higher. It's probably slide 30. Okay, cool. Thanks. All right, so then we got to go to Monterey for a CSDA conference. That felt great. We hadn't been at a conference, for the training and education in a long time, and CRPD took home some recognition awards. VCSDA was the chapter of the year. We got the Ralph Heim Advocacy Award, and the district earned a transparency certificate, which actually was a ton of work, and Aline was largely responsible for assembling everything necessary for that. And, at the conference was when we realized that the special districts in general were going to be getting some COVID relief dollars, and we knew CRPD had just received that money. So that was a happy time. But back here in the Conejo, Tom and his staff are working on the dog park improvements, and, might be simple, a little shade structure, a parking lot and a restroom, and, you're out over $1 million. So that's a significant capital project that I think folks really like. And who doesn't love their dog? And then we went over that same day for a groundbreaking at Conejo Creek Southwest, or whatever we might call it in the future. That was a lot of fun, and we really want to thank our friends at the city for the generous grant that is helping us do that project, which is underway right now, and we wouldn't have been able to eat at that event without the Kiwanians. And the work is underway. I think that photo is only a few days old. So the park is getting worked on. And while that's happening, planning activities still occur and community outreach meetings. So there's a park, Lynn Oaks Park. It's got a little extra acreage next to it and owned by the school district. And we're talking to the community about what might be possible there. One exciting thing, Reign of Terror was able to come back, the haunted house. And this board knows it, but in case somebody watching doesn't, CRPD has been a partner with Reign of Terror since it first left a neighborhood home and came here to Hillcrest Center and before landing at Jantz. And this year they've, I think, given us $50,000 as a contribution to the teen center and the Young Artists Ensemble. So they're very generous to the community. So the Reign of Terror, when it didn't happen the year before, that kind of hurt. So it's really great they're back. And of course, we're doing haunted trails again, which is great. We had a fun open house at Sopwee Trails and got to see the user groups kind of showcase what they're doing with the park. We had the gliders, the bike park, and of course, disc golf. And we've awarded the bid now for the Teen and Global Center improvements. So that'll be just a fantastic improvement. The work will be starting very early in the beginning of the year if things haven't even started already, beginning of the year. Yeah, mid-January, work will actually start. And in the no good deed goes unpunished category, as we have to curtail some activities inside the buildings during construction, we're expecting folks are going to have to make some adjustments as we move people around from room to room as we do some work inside the buildings too. And thanks to Susan and Ed Holt and their hard work, we had a very lovely Veterans Day ceremony at Conejo Creek North, including the breakfast at the Global Center. So that tradition's back. It's so great. And we also used a Santa Monica Mountains Conservancy grant to make some improvements on Casca land. Tom is very generous with his time and talent and let Casca know that he'd be willing to manage that project under the CRPD, resource area and get those improvements done. So those improvements out at Site I or the old Olympia Farm site, those are done now if anyone wants to go take a look. And we do plan to do a formal kind of grand opening of that area in the spring, kind of let some of the green stuff start growing back, so it'll really look great. And the Rancho Potrero Equestrian Center, now that we actually are there and managing it, we're getting a lot more kids out there. We're directing camps to show up. I know Safe Passages are bringing kids out there. So it is getting a lot more community use, which is fantastic. So all in all, I've done this presentation many years. There was a lot that happened. So I don't know that, other than me saying there was COVID stuff, I don't think it didn't slow us down. Let's just say that. There was definitely some, things we had to do differently, but it didn't slow Park District, this board or staff down. So overall, we had a great 2021. And I just want to take a very short minute to say hello 2022. And a lot of times when you see the goodbye last year, hello new year, you see the old guy handing something to the baby, right? Well, I wanted to show this to make you guys all think, right? So hello 2022. This young lady of 100 is actually a working volunteer at the Global Adult Community Center. So she actually is not, she does use the center, but she's actually one of the volunteers working to help other people, and she turned 100. Well, CRPD is only going to be a very young 60 years old. So we have to keep a very long time horizon. I'd like to think of parks as forever. So in anticipation of our 60th, we'll be starting a community conversation, trying to get input from the community about what they want to see in the future for the Park District. And we know we're going to be working on our wildlife response and preparedness stuff as we have been, and we're going to be keeping our kids active, healthy, and safe, keeping our parks clean and safe. And we know because the city needs to work on its land use map and housing issues, we're going to need land for new parks and open space. There's no doubt about that. So that's going to be something that needs to be looked at. We're going to be replacing aging infrastructure and looking at possible new and refurbished facilities. that's just a teaser because the board will have its strategic planning meeting at our next board meeting, the first meeting in January. So that's going to be part of the stuff we chat about then, but I kind of wanted to tease it now. So with that, I think 2021 was a really successful year, and CRPD did a fantastic job. Thank you, board.
I just wanted to point out that in your picture of the touch a truck parade, two young kids holding posters, and they're actually right behind you over your next poster on the floor. They've been really enjoyed that. I know my youngest grandson, who really enjoys garbage trucks, was absolutely thrilled. There were 3 garbage trucks in a row. It's like life could be better. Thank you for that review. That was, I mean, it is kind of breathtaking. There were so many major accomplishments. I mean, spend that much time on many of those yourself. Many times thanks to the staff for a very successful year. Respects. Sometimes you forget all the drama that goes around the setbacks because of this world. On this board, start on the site.
There we go. Yeah, you mentioned already, but I know we've talked about this in many of our board meetings, and we're recognizing individual employees or employees as a group. But what the staff has accomplished in 2021, from the very top to the newest employees to the part-timers, what the staff has done physically, financially, and in every way possible has really made 2021, I think, a much better year than we probably anticipated at the beginning of the year. So without them, top to bottom and everywhere in between, wouldn't have happened. So I just want to make sure that the staff is aware of, and please, the administrators, make sure that your people are all aware how appreciative we are of everything that they've done during the past year.
Well, it's amazing what has been accomplished during this past year. There's some innovative, creative ideas that have come forward just to meet the problems. As always, we have the best staff that anybody could have. We are very happy with them and very thank you.
So I think that Mr. Friedel picked some wonderful moments, but this could have gone on for 5 hours. I mean, if you went with all of our community partners and all of the parks and just the increased use of parks for the last year, what a lifesaver in the open space. So it's really amazing. I think that this, our unit of the parks has really been the heart of Thousand Oaks here for the last year of all the things that's been going on. So again, thanks to everybody. And my grandson and your grandson have something in common. My daughter said if she had to have her grandson or her son pick between Touch a Truck and Disneyland, he'd have to weigh it. He enjoyed that so much. It was a great idea. That parade was amazing.
Yes, I think, Jim, if you just remove the limited quote unquote impact of COVID, the accomplishments that we made, any park district would be envious of what we were able to do, even considering the weight of the COVID baloney. But I did have a question. You mentioned the Resnau Trail realignment and the work of the Rangers. Now, do I recall correctly, Matt Kuba, was he the manager of that realignment?
Yeah, he might give credit to his staff. Matt oversees the Rangers, or did. Matt, we have Corey now, which is great. But Matt absolutely was involved with everything, but the rangers on the ground actually, they're crawling in those really tall
Right.
brush and doing the alignment. And so that's the team, the whole team.
But the individual who maybe Tom, I don't know, because we haven't done too many major trail alignments. But who is the individual that says, okay, no, we've got to do this, we've got to have this slope and so forth? Who signs off on
Matt,
that?
more than
Well, it's a team effort. There's a few rangers and including Matt too, that, I mean, it's literally, the whole team goes out there. There's a few of them that are excellent trail builders and aligners, and they'll sit there and like you're just like the things you just said, they'll sit there and go, okay, let's go from here to there. Okay, well, no, not a good idea because of this or whatever. Let's try this. So they always go out, they flag it first. And then they're shooting it with, they survey it a little, like informal surveying, they flag it and they see if it's going to work, and they just go back and forth. But you have to have a really good, all of them have been to school for it. But you have to have a really good eye. It's an art form. And we have some excellent
Yeah.
trail builders and trail makers, like mapping it out and flagging it on
Yeah.
the team.
Well, it isn't as simple as just.
No, not
you know,
not at all.
And I just kind of want to emphasize
Yeah.
that we have capable staff that are intimately involved in the technical aspect of it. And so thank all the trail builders, and especially on that Resnau trail, that's major. And I think you mentioned, Jim, about sometime in the future, some additional recognition to the Resnau family. Did I understand that correctly?
Yeah, I think that's going to come through Casca.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Good. Okay. Thank you.
Oh, yes.
Where exactly is that portion of the trail on the Los Robles Trail? Like, where would you find it?
I can't remember. Is it Ventu Park that goes all the way up to the Rajna driveway? Yeah. So
Yeah.
Ventu Park, where it goes up to the peak, the Rajna's driveway, it's kind of on both sides of that. For if you were at that road, the trail used to cross that road way at the top of the mountain. And because of the donations and whatnot, they had to put a gate at the bottom, much lower in elevation. And so the trail had to go from crossing near the top to diving down, crossing below a gate, and then back up around. So they had to drop the trail and then go back
And so the
up.
trail doesn't go up on the top anymore?
Well, it is for a portion, but it does have to drop in. So it's, I'd say it goes, a mile on the top, then dips down, back up, and then finishes off near Angel Vista.
Okay.
Move on to our next item, which is items from the public. Do you have anybody waiting to address the board by chance? That's my son-in-law, he's probably just watching. Well, he's either watching or.
Do I?
babysitting our
Okay.
grandson, so I try to do both. So, yeah. All right, then we'll move on to approval of the agenda. Is there any changes? And if not, a motion to approve.
Yes, I move that we approve the agenda as presented.
Have a second for that? Director Hutler? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay. That passes. Next is consent calendar. Is there any changes to the item there? Any comments? Any questions? If not, a motion to approve.
Yeah, I'd like to move approval of consent calendar items. A, approval of minutes from the last meeting, and B, approval of warrants.
I'll second that motion.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
We have no further matters. No items for discussion, so that brings us to new items. General manager, you want to take us away on that one?
Yes, thank you, Chair Nichols, members of the board. Traditionally, at this time of year, we consider who the next chair and vice chair will be for the organization, and this is really within the board's purview. A board member did, I did notice that in the 2021, at the back of your packet on page 60, it says 2021, I was just as chair, vice chair, and then 3 other directors. Just for clarity's sake, there is a chair and a vice chair, and who comes next in order. I think we tend to try to do it in order of seniority, who has been on the board the longest, not necessarily reflecting who's next in line. On the board. I just wanted to point that out because that was the question that came up. But other than that, this is really the board's show and the board's decision. So this is the time for you to think about who wants to be your chair for 2022. Okay, so with that, I guess we can nominations from the board. Recommendations. Yes, Director Lane.
Yes, thank you, Chair Nichols. As we have in the past selected not only the vice chair, but an individual who's capable of leading us in the next year, as we saw with the many accomplishments and different challenges that we just went through. But we want to select an individual who's capable of considering all that goes into being the chair of the park district. And it's my honor to nominate Vice Chair Nellie Kissworth as the new chair.
Thank you. Nomination. Do we have anybody else who wants to make a nomination? Do we have a motion? Do we have a second to close nomination? Can I second that?
Sure, why not?
Okay, I'll second that motion. Okay, we have a suggestion for a nomination for Nellie Kessler, our vice chair, to be chair. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carries 5-0.
Congratulations.
And immediate past Chair Nichols, if I might interrupt, this is the time that we do want to specifically thank you. So the staff got together, and I think I mentioned it to a board member too that has seen this as a token of appreciation in the past, but
It's hiding on the little word.
Ooh. The bag.
I think Chair Nichols may know what this is. From here, but it is my privilege and honor from on behalf of the staff, the Conejo Rec and Park District, to thank you for leading us and doing such a great job throughout 2021. I think in terms of what we did during 2021, we've covered that. But I think as a person, it was clear you were a leader. You were clear where you wanted the park district's place in the community to be, and you wanted us to be front and center. And I think we relished that opportunity, and we appreciated that, you were supportive of that. So it's my honor to give you a little gift from all of us at CRPD. This is the chair. For the chair. So I'm holding it up. I don't think it'll come out on TV, but it basically says, "Thank you, Doug Nichols, the chair, 2021, Conejo Rec and Park District." So thank you, Chair Nichols. And so now when you go to the concerts in the park, or go camping, or do whatever, you will, everyone's going to know you were the chair.
All right.
Definitely.
Working on something.
That's very nice. Thank you very much. Appreciate that. Find some good days of weather to use that. I don't think so. Outside.
Is now a good time to make comments for the outgoing chair? Okay, I saw out of the corner of my eye, I saw your hand go up. too, but as General Manager mentioned, you had a good focus the whole year. Although you had your ideas, the collective from what you heard from the board and the staff and so forth, but you still led us and you still allowed us to recommend, integrate our thoughts and ideas as to what's important to Conejo Rec and Park District. And you're very professional. You didn't sway from the focus of what you wanted accomplished for the Park District. And as General Manager mentioned, I think the recognition the Park District has at this time of the year within the city, within the community, is more than previously accomplished. And especially with COVID, you know, having to deal with that situation. So I knew you were going to be a good one, even though it was your first year with the park board. You've been in many other organizations and positions of leadership, and you continue to demonstrate that and apply it to the Park District. So thank you very, very much. You're a great leader, and we're fortunate to have you. God bless.
I just want to thank you, Director Nichols, and your ability for capturing detail, your thoroughness. Sometimes when it's getting later, I'm not real appreciative, but I have to say that I always have been amazed at how well you can uncover details. You're very serious, you're very professional, and you really have spent time and effort to study everything that's in our packets and everything that's going on in the district. You're very thorough and conscientious. And I think you brought a great attitude to the board in your professionalism. So thank you. It'll be very hard shoes to fill. I'm not planning to fill them because you'll still be here. So I'll still count on you being so professional in what you do. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
I was supposed to be formal and refer to you as Director Nichols, but Doug, I really appreciate everything you've done for the Park District during not just the past year, the past 3 years. When you joined the board almost exactly 3 years ago, you really hit the ground running. I mean, you were somewhat familiar with the Park District. You were very familiar with open space, having been involved with that organization in the past. You're very familiar from your work life in how governments work or don't work. And as I said from the very beginning, you've done so much and contributed so much to the Park District. The amount of time and effort that you put into, as Director Cussworth said, not just making sure every item on the agenda was covered properly, but the time that you spent in meeting, I bet you probably personally met a third to a half or more of the staff, the entire Park District, possibly even more than half. You've been to most of the park facilities at least once or twice or 10 times. Helps to have grandchildren who can test the facilities, but the amount of work and effort that you have put in, as Director Cussworth said, the professional way that you have represented the district, again, not just in the past year as chair, but for all three years that you've been on the board, is just exemplary. So thank you very much for everything you've done and will continue to do for the district.
Thanks, Jeff. Appreciate it. Well, thank you so much. Thank you all of you have said. Honored to serve. Serve as the chair, but also serve with you a long time. I know if you're a mayor of the city, you can work accolades and your board. Remember, chair of the board. It's like just the first board, just white ones and. No, it's true. That's why I said I don't like to go home. But I was thinking about this, I know, being the chair is like, wearing the chair out in public. Feel good when you put it on. Feels special when you're wearing it, but it feels good when you take it off. That's what I meant, because I'll miss it. But at the same time, it's just like. Hand off, I pass the time off. But it's very enjoyable. I appreciate good support. For just listening and being attentive. Always staff. Make our jobs easier. Journal reports and all of the parts. Programs just kind of pop out of nowhere. The way we think about them, now there's a lot of work going to make it happen. And then outside of this, I mean, it's just it's a real festival like that. Yeah, where you don't have to question. And not to leave you out of it, I mean, you kind of keep us all in touch with us and why this thing, why, even though we have to do this, and I do want to acknowledge our technical. Staff have done that over there. Either live or at the leisure. Special presentation. I think all those things. Also, I think my family, I see my wife. It's been one of those things where it's like, okay, where are you going? Tell me this week, what's happening this week? Tell me that, and where's that going to be? Appreciate our support. Not too much question. Participating. Enjoy having the grandkids available to take different activities. That's the on Saturday. I was just thinking of when I started on the board, grandkids and a job, now I have no job and 4 grandkids. So there's some change for me. Our youngest there, Noah, is doing a little playtime. It's just overall. I can remember just getting into this, especially as the sharing and representation. But it's if you have a family who want to do things for it, so you have more incentives to make things happen. But that's, I know that's the reason I was doing passion we have. We all have different passions. We all have the same mission. I appreciate all the support. This every time involved. But I know support. We participate. There's always support. Thank you for the kind words. Thank you.
Yes, outgoing Chair Nichols and incoming Chair Cusworth, I'd like to offer a double toast. I think we were given this for a toast, right? And I don't know if there was another time you wanted this to take place, but I think this is an appropriate time to thank our outgoing chair for all of his work and congratulations on our incoming chair and looking forward to a great 2022. Cheers. Yeah, are there refills?
Yes, I'm no longer the chair, so I can't dictate what happens here.
Yeah, I think.
If I just throw that over.
Safely pass the gavel. Yeah, so that is the next order of business. is-
Okay,
You're in charge of that.
so I would like to open the floor for nominations for a vice chair. Any nominations? Director Huffer?
Yes, I would like to nominate a young lady who's second in seniority on our board of directors, who's been involved in the community for years and years. And I know that she's been our chair, at least 3 or 4 times or more. But I'd like to nominate Susan Holt as our vice chair.
Yes.
I'd like to second that nomination as Chair Holt, Director Holt, excuse me, I'll get it right. Director Holt as our vice chair.
Okay, shall we have a vote on that? All in favor?
Can close nominations.
Oh, close nominations?
Also move.
I'll second.
Okay, shall we vote on that? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any
You
against?
can vote.
No? Okay, so that carries.
So we close nominations.
We close the nominations and we have nominated Director Holt to be the vice chair.
I'll make that
Correct.
motion.
Oh, I thought we made the motion.
Okay,
Did we not make the motion? Oh, okay.
okay.
All righty. I'll get this right. Give me a few times. All right, so. No, thank you. Thank you, Director Lang. Oh, and I already have a new,
Oh,
boy, that's pretty.
we're gonna miss, we're gonna miss you, Scott.
My gosh. All right, so since we have figured out the selection of the chair and the vice chair, shall we move on to item 9B? And this will be the confirmation of the board appointments and assignments. Mr. Friedel, do you want to take over on this?
Yes, thank you, Chair Cusworth and members of the board. One of the first things we do after picking our new chair and vice chair for the year is look at the board appointments and assignments. This year, Director, I believe it's Huffer's term is up in Casca, so that is a fixed term appointment, a 4-year term. So the board would specifically need to make sure that we pick our Casca representative in Director Huffer's position. Other than that, it's your pleasure to do anything you want with the standing committees and ad hoc committees. I am available for questions.
Any questions? And so let me clarify, can Director Huffer no longer be on the Casca board?
No, he can remain on the Casca board. We just have to specifically reappoint somebody to another 4-year term, and it's Director Huffer's seat.
Okay, so Director Huffer.
If I could, I would be more than happy to serve another term on the Casca board, but if there is another member of our board who would just absolutely love to do that, I would be okay with that as well, but I'm more than happy to serve another term.
Are there any other members who would like to serve on the Casca board? Do I need to do a motion for?
Nomination. I'd
Okay,
like
do
to
you have a
nominate
nomination?
Director Huffer to another term on the Casca board. He's done a great job along with Director Nichols in representing the CRPD. it's probably, I've not been to many meetings recently, so I'm sure it's not always automatic. I think you represent us well, and you'll continue to represent us well. So I nominate Director Hupper.
And do we need a second for that? Do we have a second to that nomination?
I'll second that.
Okay, Director Nichols. And shall we vote?
Say all in favor.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Anyone against? No, so that passes 5-0.
Congratulations.
Thank
You have
you.
another 4 years on there. And now
sunsets.
shall we, are there any other discussion on these standing committees? Yes, Director Nichols.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I did have one committee question. I know we have the Branch Patrol Committee Question Center Committee that I was participating on. And the purpose of that committee is to consider the Branch Patrol Committee questions to use a public amenity public manage it for ongoing operations. And though it was intended to have it as working with the city and taking that kind of swap. And I didn't know if we needed to rephrase this or if that role has been accomplished. I know as we kind of started to toy with the lighting issues and some of the neighborhood issues, I think maybe it would be helpful to have the capacity to use that committee in some ways to oversee some of the initial conversations with our neighbors. I don't know if we need to rephrase that or if it's still the language there is adequate to address whatever future needs we might have this next year or two. As we kind of
Yeah,
adjust the ownership.
because there's a lot of interest in it right now. I think there's still value in having that as an ad hoc committee, and I would suggest simply deleting the second sentence, because I think the first sentence works.
I would agree.
And so for clarification, what are you exactly saying in there? Are we looking?
So on page 67, I'm gonna take this, on page 67, under the Rancho Potrero Community Question Center Committee ad hoc, there's two sentences. The first sentence, because there's still, public interest in the, capital improvements that are considered for the equestrian center, there probably is still value in having an ad hoc committee, the board be able to meet with staff and talk about some things. But really the second part of that, the second sentence really isn't necessary, because that was a multi-agency kind of effort to do what we did, which was transfer
We
the
accomplished.
property. We
Okay.
accomplished that. So I think the first sentence though makes sense to keep it.
So do we need to have a vote on taking out that second sentence, or do we just include that in our recommendation?
I've already struck in it, but
Okay.
I think that if you want a formal motion, that's certainly appropriate. If it was, no objections, I would also just take care of it that way.
Okay. Is there anything else that anybody would like to bring up?
Chair.
On our
Christopher,
committee?
I'd like to make a comment on that.
Please.
On Rancho Potrero, as a member of that ad hoc committee, maybe in the future, it can change from ad hoc to another. I think it may even, grow into a permanent committee based on not only the management of ongoing operations, which is very important. This is a unique responsibility for the park district. We've not had this entity specifically called out in the past. So I think there's some things in there that we need to learn as a board and a district and so forth to manage it so it goes off into the future, and then maybe in the future it can be eliminated. But I think it's still very important, as Member Nichols mentioned and the general manager. There's a lot of interest in this, and we want to stay involved and want the board to be informed as to what the important aspects of this new equestrian quote unquote division that we have under our responsibilities. So, I just believe it's important enough. We've accomplished a lot, but there's still an ongoing our responsibility as a board to stay on top of it, so.
Okay,
And, yeah,
yes, Director Holt.
So it just has to be reworded, saying to committee.
I think we're just going to take out the last sentence on this.
Right.
And then we're going to keep the ad hoc at this time, but perhaps next year we will reevaluate if we want to make it a permanent committee.
Right.
whenever.
Okay,
That
or
sounds good.
whenever.
But you,
Yeah.
you wanted to take out the Costco representative or the non.
Correct.
Correct.
That whole sentence.
The whole sentence?
We're going to
Yes.
take out the entire sentence. Are there any other additions or deletions or comments on our committee descriptions, or on if anybody else wants to change committees or is unhappy with their committee or wants to go to another committee? Do we have any other discussion on this? No?
Okay.
Then can I have a recommendation that we're going to modify and confirm these committees as has been discussed?
So moved?
Okay, a second on this. So moved by Director Nichols and seconded by Director Huffer. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, carries 5-0. So we'll move on to the norms and guidelines and processes. So Mr. Friedel, are you going to talk about this?
Yes, thank you, Director or Chair Cussworth and members of the board. These are important to touch and review once a year because this, I believe, helps set the culture and understanding among the board, but also staff in terms of how we all work together. They've evolved over the years and slight tweaks here and there, but they've largely remained stable for the, I don't know, past 3 or 4 years. It is totally within the board's prerogative to consider, modify, or change as necessary, but staff doesn't have any proposed changes at this time.
Do any board members have a comment? Yes, Director Holt?
That's on page 6 and D at the top. So I wasn't quite sure. The public may address the board on non-agendized items for no more than 30 minutes. That's not for, that's for all the speakers, and then how do you control them? Because down below, we have 30 minutes under 2.3. I don't quite understand it. So each speaker can speak for 30 minutes?
No, I believe that intent is that the public may address the board on non-agenda item in both agenda sections, which we have items from the public at the beginning of the meeting and then items from the public at the end of the meeting. And so it's collectively for no more than 30 minutes for all speakers in each section. I think what they're signaling there is, hey, we're going to give 30 minutes at the beginning of the meeting for public comments, 30 minutes at the end for public comments, depending on how many speakers there are. That doesn't limit anyone's ability to comment on every other item on our agenda as well. So it's just, I think, a time management thing that thankfully in my time here, we've never
You're talking
needed.
about a total of 30 minutes, which I understood that.
Yeah,
I don't know if it's stated quite correctly. Well, I guess the public as a whole, I guess it goes as, yeah. But it just, you know, you don't want somebody getting up there for 30 minutes.
Yeah, I think what saves it is the for all speakers clause right
Yeah.
after
Yes.
30 minutes. So.
It says a little further down that each member of the public shall be allowed 3 minutes,
That's
subject to
right.
the chair's discretion to provide input to the board. So I
know,
guess,
I know, but I mean, that's why I thought these two were conflicting in a way.
Okay.
Depends on how they're interpreted.
okay.
So,
So I guess if we had more than 10 people and they were all talking for 30 minutes, then the other people couldn't speak.
They all, excuse me, they all talk for 3 minutes. You have 10 people. Yeah.
Right. Then we would cut it off after the 10 people.
Well,
Is that correct?
This is a guideline, so you could choose to keep going. Or say 15 people showed up and all wanted to speak at the beginning on a public comment item, not an agenda item, but a public comment item. You could say, I'm going to use my discretion. We're going to hear all of you in 30 minutes, but we're going to give you 2 minutes each
Okay.
instead of 3.
may I just ask, the city council, they have a limit too on.
Yeah.
What is their limit again? Is it 3 minutes?
Yeah, yes,
I think it's 3
they're sort of
minutes.
default like ours is 3 minutes. And then they have, I think, a set table, like this many speakers, it goes to 2 minutes. This many speakers goes to 1 minute.
Mhm.
Like we just knock on wood, that hasn't really been our thing.
We haven't had anything that had 60 speakers for one.
Well, and again, this is for items from the public. So if we
Right.
had 60 speakers that all wanted to speak on a like an action item, then our tradition has been to hear everybody, was hours.
Okay. Do we have any other comments? Yes, Director
Well,
Lang.
If you notice in the beginning of the first paragraph, on July 11th, 2012, the board unanimously approved the norms and guidelines, which I don't know about amazes me, but surprises me that prior to that, all these many years, we never had our norms and guidelines and procedures. We kind of understood what they should be, and we used those understood guidelines and so forth to get us to where we were. But it was myself and Mark Jacobson who really, and I think one of our consultants in a workshop mentioned how important it is for us to have something established and documented. So that back in 12 is when that occurred. So prior to that, the Park District, we understood, certain time limits, we understood certain recognition of public, et cetera, et cetera. But until just 9 years ago or thereabouts, we didn't have a formal document stating that. So I'm very, very pleased that we've done so. And this will be the last year that I will kind of go back and mention the importance of this document, this part of our Park District Board of Directors. Thank you.
Are there any other comments? Then I'd like to say, I think it's nice to have something like this because you usually don't need it until you do need it.
Yep.
Yes.
And then you can go back and say, well, what do we do in this instance? And then there's something that you can refer to instead of being in oblivion.
Exactly.
So I'd like to thank you, Director Lang, for your good work on that, and also Director Jacobson, because again, this is a good document to have. And of course, it is a living document. So if in the future, throughout the year, if we see a conflict, we can always be adding things. A lot of times you don't need to add things until you think, oh, this hasn't come up before. We better add that to our norms and directives. So I think it's very nice that we're looking at this once a year so that we can actually know what we have. And if we feel that we do need to add guidelines, we can put them in. So
Exactly.
thank you.
Exactly.
Okay, so if there are no further comments, would someone like to make a recommendation to approve the guides and norms? Okay, Director Holt and Director Huffer, did you second that? Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, carries 5-0. All right, so we're moving on to 9D, Conejo Valley Days. Is this something you're going to talk about, Mr. Hare?
Sure is, yes. Thanks, Chair Cusworth, members of the board. Just right away tell you, of course, Mr. Frank Akery wanted to be here. He was scheduled to be here. The last minute, he had a last minute conflict, which he couldn't avoid, so he's unable to attend. And I said I would speak in his stead. So, or answer any questions that you may have regarding the event. So there's a couple recommendations. One is determined that the Canelo Valley Days 2022 is categorically exempt from CEQA. And then the second recommendation is to authorize the general manager to enter the CBD agreement for 2022. We recommend that the event is an exemption under class 23 categorical exemption, which is that the facility is designed for, and there's a history of similar events. And between, like we said before, chili cook-off, Canelo Valley Days, Oak Cart, Cougars of New Year, we've had a lot of history in the past regarding the use of this facility for these type of events. And then for the agreement goes, it was just actually fairly quickly, not too long ago, Frank did a great job of coming right back in. He was before the board in May of this year for a June Conejo Valley Days 2021. He was managed to pull that off in, I think it was about 6 weeks from the time, you kind of got the green light with COVID to do that. So he jumped on the chance. He had a real successful event. He spread it over 2 different weekends in June. The field was down, so he had it all in the parking lot. It was pretty successful. He enjoyed how the process worked. Staff really enjoyed how the process worked and having all the rides in the parking lot. So this year he wants to come back again, and it's about the same time period in June over 2 different weekends. Again, all the activities will be in the parking lot. All the agreement is, and the conditions are extremely similar to the previous year's agreement. The only difference being some of the dates are slightly different, but with that, I'm available for questions.
Any questions for Mr. Director Hufford?
I know last year was, well, actually this year, 2021, where he pulled it off in just a few months, is very unusual. I'm assuming if this event again is going to be strictly in the parking lot, that he'd be using if not identical, very similar layout to what he used in June of this year.
Yes.
Which basically is an amusement park. I didn't get there, but my impression from what we heard was that there really was fairly minimal involvement by community organizations. I guess what I'm concerned about is this turning into an 11-day carnival that we're renting our parking lot basically for a non-community event. We have the chili cook-off, which benefits directly the Rotary and indirectly all the charities that Rotary supports. I don't know if we're going to again have the Oak Cart Music Festival, but in the past, that large event again was run by a Rotary Club and again indirectly benefited all of the charities that Rotary benefits. Most of the other, or at least several of the other large events that occur either Conejo Creek North or Conejo Creek South that have been approved by the board in the past have a strong community component. In the past, pre-COVID and back several years, for years and years, Conejo Valley Days was a major community event. The rides and things like that were fun, but the various community organizations use it as a primary fundraiser for their purposes. And I'm just wondering if approving an 11-day event that's primarily a carnival, and I personally am not sure what benefit is accruing to the community for this event, whether this is something we really want to continue. So I'm concerned about the lack of community benefit.
Good points. And what I think, if Frank were here, so we did have some meetings with Frank regarding this, and it was his desire, because if you remember, his traditional pre-COVID times were in like Mother's Day or beginning in May. he desired to or return back to pre-COVID, post the whole Conejo Creek South, and return to the few years when he had some of it on the grass and some of it on the park line. And we were more than happy to accommodate him. But I believe he is still feeling the carnival pinch because of COVID. The amount of or the scheduling he has for the vendors. When we met with him, we said, hey, we're more than happy to have you back onto the turf, or a little bit of the turf and the parking lot like you did before, and we can accommodate you on this weekend, and this weekend. But because of COVID and commitments that the carnival operator had, and his commitments that he has with the carnival operator, this June timeframe was the only thing that could be worked out. So I think those are valid points as far as the community participation, as far as nonprofits, financially benefiting from it. But I also think there is a large benefit to the community as a whole, as a patron to the event. We're in year, I think this might be year 61, 62. And I think it's something I think that the tradition should continue, and that in the following years, I think Frank is looking to going back to the model that you did. I think and again, COVID was, I think, still a big factor on when he could do it and how he could do it and who he could do it with this particular year. So he was kind of caught in a box, and when we told him this is what we can give you, and he couldn't go back to the way it was. But that's his desire to do what you said. And we look at it too as from and I know, again, just one other point from our point of view, for like we're a selfish CRPD point of view, we've got an empty parking lot for 8 weeks, and just to do some sort of benefit for the parking lot and not the fields we're more than happy to have them on the parking lot.
Okay, but our rules for, or the way we charge organizations for use of our facilities, whether it's a field or a parking lot or anything else, is based primarily on who the organization benefits. If this is just a carnival, which, okay, the residents might enjoy having a carnival, but it's not really, other than the entertainment value, it's not really benefiting the community. It's benefiting, Frank's, I've known Frank for years. I think he's a good guy. I don't know what he gets out of it financially, but I'm sure the carnival provider makes some money off of this. If we are providing a site for a carnival and much or most of the funds are going to a commercial carnival operator, why are we charging them? And I believe these are the lowest community rates.
This is the
that we're
nonprofit
talking
rate
about.
because Conejo Valley Days is a nonprofit, so they're the ones who are sponsoring the event.
Okay, well,
There's a line in here about the nonprofit. So I'm assuming that he's going to seek out nonprofits.
Yeah.
On page 89.
Yeah, that's part of our original. I mean, that's like we're at a template line that we put in about 5 or 6 years ago, and right, so we're keeping it in. So 5 or 6 years ago, the nonprofits, and just off the top of my head, $75,000 to $100,000, would be benefiting from it. This past year, he was only able to have one nonprofit participate in the carnival in June of 2021, and I think they benefited about $5,000 from it. Yes. It's because he wants to have more. Of course, he wants to have more nonprofit and community member participations. So, but we have that in there because we want to see who's getting what and for what services.
I think Director Lang, you have a comment?
Yes, I do. Thank you. And I totally understand Director Huffer's concern and looking in the past of what it was and what it accomplished for our community nonprofit organizations, et cetera, et cetera. You go on and on about that. But as Mr. Hare mentioned, the impact of COVID and the situation that it has imposed upon the Conejo Valley Days type of event is understandable. And I too, have known Mr. Acree for many more years, most likely than you. And he has a community at heart. And he, based on his personal dedication, commitment, and so forth, has allowed Conejo Valley Days, not like it used to be, but at least it's there, to still be here. And I think if Mr. Hare can communicate back to Mr. Acree, what it is, we see the importance of this Conejo Valley Days. I'm sure he'll totally agree. But if we can somehow, with dates and providers, carnival providers, whoever, we can get back into that routine of having community organizations actively participate in the Conejo Valley Days, I'm sure he'd go along with that too.
Yeah.
But I totally support this motion or this project. I see the importance, even though it isn't, Little League or Bobby Sox and et cetera, groups. I think just the fact that they're coming to an event, keeping them here in the community and with some of their friends and having fun, it'll make an impact on them. And in the future, when we transition back, and maybe you can be part of a committee that helps get us there. I think Frank would really appreciate it. So,
And I said, just to elaborate too, I know I said it before too, but when, Frank is a big thinker. He's not,
oh yeah,
oh, this is fine. No, I think the meeting we had with Frank, he was extremely disappointed that we were not allowing what he wanted to do, because these were the dates that he was boxed into. And he was like, well, just give me this part of the field. And I swear, I swear it's not going to be too bad. And you could refurbish that some other time. And and I was like, no, we can't do that. So we had a real good discussion, but like I said, Frank's a big, he doesn't want to have this model. He does not. He wants this bigger and better and to benefit the community. And I think this is just more of a keeping the streak alive at the moment. Keep the consecutive Conejo Valley Days going.
thank you. Yes, one of the questions I had was specific to parking. Being that the majority of the paved parking lot is being consumed by the carnival. Is that an issue, or Conejo Valley Unified School District?
Mhm.
Are they collaborating
Yes.
and
Yeah.
working with us?
He
on that?
parks on the northern end of our lot, and then he also parks in the school district lot. And it's non-exclusive at Canelo Creek North, but it worked well last year.
That's what I was gonna
Yeah.
ask. Good. Well, thank him for the efforts and thank you, Chair Gusworth.
Director Nichols?
Yes, thank you. I share your concerns, Dr. Hopper. I wish it were more of what I remember it was when our kids were young. And I think I would agree that it probably has to do with the COVID issues, but then also I think it's a bigger issue in our community and the kind of moving away from the things that we used to do. There used to be a Grand Marshal competition, a Badgeroo competition, a beard growing competition, and decorations. And I was involved in those committees. I was on the Conejo Valley Days board as a committee person for several years. And there was, that whole aura around it, the parade, everything, the rodeo, all those things. And then there was the commercial tent and all the vendors and everything. And it was just like, it truly was a community event. And, it would be great just to say, hey, we want to do that again. But I've also seen how, the chili cook-off is spun off, and then you've got, the car show, and all these other spin-offs that have kind of taken parts of those and turn them into something else where it's kind of Conejo Valley Day reminiscent, but it's not really all together. And I mean, I'd like to have it all back to the way that it once was. I certainly saw the community value of that. And if there's a way to kind of just get this going until it gets back to at least maybe not what it used to be, but something more than what it is now, I would fully support that. But in the meantime, if this is all that the community is able to do, and we can at least get it going, and then maybe work with Frank, I don't know what options there are, whether with some of the service clubs, get some people together and say, hey, how can we, make this, pick it up a notch, and maybe not everything, but at least, one step at a time. What else can we do to truly make it a community event? Because there still are parades in some of our neighboring communities. Why don't we not have one? It's like we ought to be able to do that. So I would agree. I'm wholly with you there. But if this is what they're willing to do now, it's like, all right, then let's talk with them and see how we can get to that next step. But I'm right with you.
Thank you. Are there any other comments? Okay, it seems to me from listening to everything that this is just a stop in this is just to keep the continuity of Conejo Valley Days, and that we would like to do it. And so we're saying that since he can only do it in June instead of May, he can't use the fields, correct?
Correct.
All right, so he would like to bring it back to May when he can use the fields eventually. Is that right?
Mhm.
I mean, I'm a big Conejo Valley Days. I got first place for my homemade bread one year. I was also got first place for women's Western wear. And my kids, my girls went to camp many years based on the fry bread booth. So I think it was a wonderful community event, and I think everybody would like it to be back the way it was. It is hard. I don't know why it is to get as much community participation, but I think that from what you're saying, he's trying to keep it going, and hopefully next year, without COVID, without field restrictions, that it can start to resemble what we had before.
Yeah, I'll convey that message to Frank.
So I think that with that, is there a recommendation a motion for the recommendation 1 and 2 for, continuing to have Conejo Valley Days be exempt from this act? Director Nichols?
Yes, I'd like to move that we determine Conejo Valley Days as categorically exempt from CEQA, and also authorize the general manager to execute the CBD agreement for 2022.
Thank you. Is there a second for this?
I'll second that.
Director Lang, all who approve?
Aye.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye. Any?
Before I vote, I'd like to make a comment.
Okay.
I'm gonna have to vote no on this just because, as I said, I know Frank, not nearly as well as Director Lang, but I know Frank and I know he means well. But without something in the document that assures us that this is a one and done, that if he comes back to us in a future year with the same, and we don't know what's going to happen with whether it's COVID or some other disease. It may be that we're still under restrictions a year from now, heaven forbid. But I can't support the idea of basically running a carnival for 11 days at community group prices. If we were to either shorten or charge more or make sure that it's only for 1 year, I could maybe support it, but as it is, I can't support it, so I'm voting no.
Okay, so that is 4 to approve and 1 voting no. Yes? I think we did.
She got it. She said,
I said it, didn't I? We said the A, yes.
We did hear it. Okay.
And then he said no.
Sorry.
Okay. All right. No, well, I may be doing different verbiage too. So if I'm getting wrong verbiage, you correct me. Interesting that you can listen to something for 3 years, and if you're not directly paying attention, you're just saying your yeses and nos as people go along. So the motion carries 4 to 1. And as a note to Mr. Hare, will you relay this concern? And that we'll be looking at this again next year when we make this motion again, if he wants to continue with Conejo Valley Days, and that we would like to see it go back more to a community event. Okay, thank you very much. Moving on to item 9E. So this is our naming of our Conejo Creek Southwest. Is that right? Conejo Creek South, Conejo Creek Southwest, Conejo Creek Southwest Park naming. Who would like to talk about this? Will this be you, Mr. Friedel?
Sure, I'll start. This was the Park Facility Naming Committee met a couple times on August. Said, hey, let's get a little bit of adjacent, really close by neighbor input regarding the park. So we did get a few suggestions from that. Not as many as you would have maybe thought, but we had a few. And then the committee met again on August 10th, or I'm sorry, on November 1st to discuss all the various possible names. But the one that kept rising to the top, the one that sort of has a nice alliteration, I guess, was Page Lane Neighborhood Park. So the committee met. The committee members were Chair Cutsworth and Director Huffer. So obviously the committee members are here and can also speak to it. But and I might say Conejo Creek Southwest is, we have Conejo Creek North, Conejo Creek South, and I think there's a feeling like we need another name. We can't keep using the Conejo Creek for every park, even though they're all part of the big complex. So there was that desire to come up with another name as well. With that, I'm available and your committee is available for questions.
Are there any questions or comments? Director Nichols?
I like the idea of Page Lane Neighborhood Park. I'm trying to think of, when you think of parks in our community, the name kind of reflects something that's, like you said, it's either that area or some heritage there. And a lot of them are reflections of the neighborhood that they're at. And by the name itself, you can almost figure, oh, well, it's probably over there, because you can kind of tell by the name. So I think this works with that. I was thinking like Greenwich Village, it's kind of that area, but I don't know how many people really know where Greenwich Village is. Yeah. It's one of those legacy areas of the Conejo Valley. Most people are just like, really, this is
Doesn't
not
mean
New York,
anything to them.
But yeah, I like Page Lane, especially since it goes right through the center of the park. It just seems to be only natural. So yeah, I like the idea. Thank you for suggesting that. I think it'll work well. I also think by default, that's probably what it would end up being called by the people who went there. Oh, it's the park over there in Page Lane. So, exactly.
Yeah.
Dover still has that name. It's still today. People call it that. Yeah, very good. So thank you. I think it's a good idea. Thank you.
Any other comments? Director Lang?
Yes, it mentions the last sentence, various other names, or considering various names. What were those various names? Well, you want to share with all?
Can I, because
Yeah, go ahead.
Go, yes,
I'm
please.
not going to lead the entire list, but the criteria, historical reference, honoring an individual, some other things like that. Best we could determine, there really wasn't anything particularly historical in that area. There was some discussion about possibly honoring Mark Jacobson and Tex Ward by somehow naming the park after them, but that didn't really resonate too much. We did get some neighborhood suggestions. I'm not going to read the whole list, but someone suggested that we call it Borderline Memorial Park. And no, I don't think so. I don't know if these were actually from neighbors or if staff was just having fun with these, but I mean, someone suggested Roadkill Neighborhood Park or Las Veritas Neighborhood Park, which means path, lane, trail, sidewalk. Dos Conejos Velosos Neighborhood Park, Two Fast Rabbits. So, I mean, there were a couple of moderately serious suggestions, some totally silly suggestions, but as Director Nichols said, Page Lane just sort of rose to the top because that's where it's located, and it really does have a nice sound to it. You know, Main Street Park, but Page Lane, it just sort of sounds nice.
Yes, it does.
I was just glad that Paige Summers didn't stick around for this, thinking, oh, we're gonna name it after Paige Summers. No, it's Page Lane. So anyway, those were some of the examples that were discussed and dismissed.
Did anybody recommend Page Lane bifurcated neighborhood park?
Actually,
Is there a motion on the floor?
No.
Not at this time. Would you like to make a motion?
I move the recommendation, official naming the originator of vacant property, now commonly referred to as Conejo Creek Southwest, naming it Page Lane Neighborhood Property.
Do I have a second on that?
I'll second that.
Okay, thank you, Director Nichols. What is I supposed to say? All approve, what do I say? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, that carries 5-0. Let's look at the proposed amendment to employment agreement dated May 22nd with the district's general manager. And who would like to talk about this?
So,
Go ahead.
sure, no, I would say I would love to have had Melissa here, but she finally got to get out of town. So she actually prepared the report, but I certainly can provide a report and answer any questions, but I know, sounds like the questions.
Chair,
Yes, I'm sorry. Director Nichols, please. Director Holt, please.
I'd like to move the recommendation to approve and adopt Amendment 4 to the employment agreement between CRPD district and general manager that was dated May 22nd, 2014, adjusting the annual base salary by 5%, which currently then would be from 224 plus to 235. $347.68.
Is there any discussion or comments before I ask for a second for that motion?
Well, you can
Do-
ask for, you can ask for a second. We can have discussion after
Do
that.
we have a second for that motion?
I'll second that.
Okay, Director Lang? And Director Nichols, do you have a comment?
Yes, just a comment. While we've each had the opportunity to meet with the general manager one-on-one, they've also been able to meet with him in closed session to share. I thought it only appropriate to, in public, share a few things about our general manager. In my mind, I just like people to know why I vote the way I vote. And if I'm going to support this, I want people to know why I'm willing to support this, especially in these days where salaries are critiqued, and especially those of city managers and general managers. And I would say that's always good to critique your taxpayer money. We are all taxpayers, and we want to make sure that our taxpayer dollars are spent efficiently and effectively and appropriately. And I know I've worked with agencies and observed agencies where sometimes that number one person, I question the justification for that salary. But I wanted to point out some of the things that really kind of rose to the top for me as I was just thinking about our general manager, Jim Friedel, and his work ethic is he's ever present. He's always everywhere he needs to be, whether it be at community organizational meetings, at conferences, throughout are the events that we have in our community. He is always there, he's always engaged. He does that unselfishly and is wanting to make sure that our district is well represented, but then also that he's prepared to address any issues that we as board members might come up with. I think he's also always aware, not only of our local issues, but our broader community issues, state issues, and even beyond. He makes it his business to be aware, again, to make sure that he brings information back to the Park District to benefit the district, the community, and also, again, to be an advisor and a mentor to the board. See, he's courteous, and cautious at the same time. You know, he's always very appropriately addressing individuals as well as groups, very well spoken, but also listening at the same time. So I appreciate that. Not trying to push an agenda or push the envelope, but balancing that line very carefully. Sometimes I think he's almost like a one-man show, and I know he's not, but he writes reports, he's looking at our agenda, he's managing our schedule as far as what we see here in our reports and agendas. And I know there's certain things that happen routinely, and I know the executive team is a remarkable part of that. But I just see Jim as just trying to, constantly making sure that things are where they need to be, and trying to look at the small things as well as the large things. He keeps us on schedule. And I also think he's very conscientious financially about where we are as a district. I can remember 30 some years ago when I was with Casca and having conversations with Tex Ward, and that guy was a penny pincher. He was very austere about, he was willing to spend money where it needed to be spent, but he's very conscientious about how money was spent right. And I think that's part of the legacy that he's left. And I think Jim has picked that up, and why we have such a well-run organization. When the money is needed to be spent, he knows how to do that, but also wants to make sure that we have money in the bank. And so I just think for all those reasons, I think we do very well with Jim. And I will also say, serving on the state California Association of Recreation Park Districts, and then having gone to our state conferences for that, and also for the Special Districts Association, I hear comments outside of Jim's ears about their appreciation for Jim as a peer, and how much he has assisted them or helped them, or just as a sounding board. So we never hear about that from Jim, but I've been the beneficiary hearing about Jim from others. So it's just kind of, to me, it's not something that I didn't know, but it's kind of like it's a confirmation of what I've already known. So I want to make sure that the public was aware of why I'm voting to support this, and why I think we actually get a bargain with Jim as our general manager.
Thank you.
Watch that.
Any other comments? Director Lang?
Yes, I'm pleased Director Nichols mentioned that. We don't take this decision lightly. As mentioned, we've met one-on-one with the general manager. We've discussed it in closed session. There are previous guidelines that we've gone through, and being responsible for our overall budget, this is very important. And we're willing to reward hard work and dedication. And like Director Nichols mentioned, his reputation at the state level. I've been involved, as you know, a number of years with various state organizations. And he does have a reputation that's par excellence. And his willingness to get down and work hard and so forth. Legislative committee, he was a recipient of recognition this past conference. So yeah, I too am proud to support this recommendation, and believe that we as a board have put a lot of time and effort in determining the rewards for his efforts. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Lang. Any other comments? Yes, Director Huffer.
Yes, just very briefly, Director Nichols mentioned a lot of Jim's strong points. One other that I just wanted to mention is the people that he has hired, the people that he's directly responsible for, and ultimately indirectly responsible for. He's made some great hires, but not only has he hired great people, but he's supported them appropriately. He's there when they need him, but he also gives them the flexibility to I guess, do your own thing, but it's the people that he's hired that I think is one of the outstanding features of Jim as general manager.
Thank you, Director Huffer. Any other comments? I would also like to put in my comments, as far as the public goes, what General Manager Friedel is being paid is very competitive with other people in his position throughout the state and throughout the area. When you have a good leader, it inspires everyone, you know, below him or that he's working with. I guess not really below him, but the people that he's working with. And I think that's one of the great things that we have is our staff in CRPD. So thank you very much. We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? No, 5-0. Thank you. So we'll go to reports and announcements. So recreation. Anybody have any questions on the recreation highlights that we have in our?
Well, you can
Anyone
just
want
kind
to
of
say
go
anything?
through item 10A through F. And if anybody wants to,
Okay, does anybody have anything that they would like to talk about from 10A through F?
um,
Okay, yes, please.
just real briefly, Rochelle, on the on your program enrollment summary report, on the teen third from the bottom, I think the numbers are healthy when you compare the overall enrollment 3-year comparison from 2019, 153, and then that 2020 COVID went down to 66, but it's rebound to 186. A very positive change. And that's a group, the teens is a group that you don't want to lose. It's very important to not only our community, but the future programs that we offer. So I'm sure there's a lot of people to thank for that, but I'm very, when I went through that and I saw those numbers, I thought, that's a good sign. So thank you, Rochelle.
Thank you, Director Lang. Any other comments, Director Nichols?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I had one question on that very same program enrollment summary report on page 148. Ms. Callis, I noticed in, looks like 4 categories, Hillcrest Center, Dos Vientos, the Adult Center, and the Outdoor Group Unit. I was looking at from 2019 to 2021. I was ignoring 2020. There seems, all the other categories that I didn't mention, 2019 to 2021, they're comparable. It's like they're not too high, not too low, but kind of about the same. But those 4 that I did mention, it seemed like there was quite a disparity between 2019 and 2021. And I was wondering if you had any insight as to why those numbers were either higher or lower than 2019.
Sure, I can take a jab at that. So aquatics is one of them, I think, that you mentioned. Aquatics throughout the whole year and in spring too, they have access to the CLU pool. So they've been able to accommodate more lap swimmers and swim lessons because they have time where they use the actual CLU's pool, not just the community pool. And before COVID, we didn't have that during the non-summer months. So
Okay.
basically an additional pool. I believe the other one,
Hillcrest Center.
Hillcrest Center for the Arts. Well, we had a transition with our music program. The music program that's in our after schools that used to be under ACCB. It is now in-house and under our Hillcrest Center for the Arts. So there's almost 1,000 kids
Yes,
that are
okay.
now in our system. So that's
Okay.
why that number is different. And then
Okay.
the sports and the teen center, I think those were the other 2, correct?
It was actually Dos Vientos Center. 'Cause it
Dos
was-
Vientos numbers are actually lower than
Right,
2019.
Right, yeah, significantly lower.
Yeah, they are, they're just making their way back up. It could also be a timing thing on Dos Vientos. I'd have to dig a little bit more into
Okay.
that.
And then also was the adult center from 2019 to 2021. It's still quite low.
It's still growing. I mean, if you
Okay.
remember, the Global Center was the Global Center and the Teen Center were the last ones to reopen.
Okay,
So it's
okay.
still just trying to get everything back up and running.
And then it was the outdoor unit, which is, about, I don't know, maybe half of what it was in 2019.
Yeah, outdoor unit hasn't had could be a timing thing with some of their events. But they haven't been doing as much of the hikes and stuff, haven't been as successful as that they've been in the past. So,
Okay.
but I could double check on that too.
So there's nothing across the board per se. It's just each group is its own entity and has had its challenges.
Yeah, and it can be staffing, that not having the staff to do outdoor certain activities that they've done in the past, or people aren't signing up for certain things. But with that being said, most of them, I believe, are obviously on the uptake, doing better than 2020. So
Yes. Oh, yes.
and if you'll
yes.
remember, we had planned at least 1 to 2 years at a minimum for people to get back to
Yes.
the 2019 numbers. And over half of our units are exceeding that right now. And so
Right.
our total numbers as a division are higher than that right now, which
Okay.
we were really surprised to see and happily surprised to see. But yeah, we're looking into some of the other reasons why, it's not, numbers aren't there yet,
Okay.
but we expect them to be there in the next year or so.
Very good. All right.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Any other comments or questions? Okay, let's move on to the Parks Division report. Mr. Hare.
Yeah, thanks, Chair Cuthbert, members of the board. Just one item, and as you know, we got the ribbon cutting at South Shore Hills Neighborhood Park at 9 o'clock this Saturday. Unfortunately, I will be unable to attend, as I will be helping out with some other events with the Safe Passages kids.
So can some send out a memo on that?
Sure, we can send out another. Early, can you do that? Just want a reminder. Oh, for the
On
Safe
ribbon
Passenger, the
cutting.
ribbon cutting.
Yeah,
Which one? Ribbon cutting?
ribbon cutting.
I think the email went out this
Yeah.
week.
What?
There was an email, I think, went out this week on that.
Yeah, we can send another one out.
Yeah. Okay.
Any questions for Mr. Hare? Okay, we'll move on to the Recreation Division report. Mrs. Callis.
Thank you, Chair Cusworth and members of the board. So you have an update for our fall programs that you guys got in your packet today. And so I'll just couple highlights. We sent it out to over 3,000 people. We had an almost 9% response rate, which is excellent. Again, our surveys get really good response. Our community appreciates it. It was very interesting on this one to look that sports had the most people that responded to it. And I think that has a lot to do with Dana's got our basketball and our volleyball back going again, and people are participating. Our leagues are, not maybe what they had originally signed up before they had to play with masks on, but they're doing very well with that. A couple of the things that I wanted to just point out is people like that they're gaining flexibility. The classes are good for them. They're building confidence for their kids. They're having fun and they're making friends, which are all great things. And then 90% of people said, over 90% said they'd recommend the classes. Over 95% of people were happy with the instructor and the facility. So that's all just really good stuff. Just to let you know, if you haven't seen the social media post yet, unfortunately, our movie has been canceled on Friday. The ground is just too wet, and good and bad. We need the wetness, we need the rain, but unfortunately, we've had to cancel the movie. Good note, mark your calendars for the 29th. Hopefully that movie will still go and there will be real snow there. This Saturday, we have the 3 locations, which Santa will be visiting for our youth that are in our disadvantaged areas. There are a lot of people in this community have donated toys and or dollars to purchase toys. And we are just so grateful and so lucky to live in a community that cares so much about everyone, including those that maybe don't have as much as others. So there's lots of toys that are going to be given out this weekend at 3 locations. You guys received an email with all the locations and the times. So feel free to stop by any of them, all of them, one of them, split it up. That's what our rec team is doing. We're trying to each hit one. Tom's the awesome person that's going to go to all 3. So, and then a couple of new things that are on the horizon. Safe Passage has received some grants, and the nonprofit Safe Passage, and they are working with aquatics now, and we are looking to be able to provide 30 youth their first swimming lesson. So about a 6-7 week program for the youth, so, or classes. So Dee and Melissa and Tim Hagel are working on that, and that should hopefully be completed before the end of summer. So we're real excited about that. I think one of the grants actually came from the city, so we're really thankful for that one. And something that's in the works is there looks like we're going to be starting another new program in recreation where we're going to be doing some fun stuff out of some of our neighborhood parks. And so that's going to be more to come. Some will be complimentary into some of the areas where kids don't maybe have transportation to get out, and we'll bring some, you know, fun things for them to do on a weekend. And other things will be paid programming that we'll be able to take out to a neighborhood park, so parents don't have to drive to a community center. So we're in the very beginning stages of that, but it's looking to be coming into fruition hopefully in the next couple of months. With that, I am available for questions.
Any questions for Ms. Callis? I have a question. Is CRPD in charge of a program for elementary schools to have choruses after school?
We currently are. That's part of our music program. So we have, and Scott can chime in, we have strings, band, and chorus. Did I get that right? Okay, cool.
I think it's my granddaughter that's at Maple. I couldn't attend because it was after school, but my husband went and heard our daughter sing, and my daughter said that the program was sponsored by CRPD, and she was so grateful because then she didn't have to go and drive her somewhere, and her daughter was able to participate in a singing program after school. So
It's a partnership with independent contractors. So the music instructors run their own business, and they partner with us for marketing and support, administrative support. So,
well,
yes.
I think it's wonderful.
and that used to be with ACCV, and we're very grateful for all they've done for the many, many years that that program was there.
So will this be similar to what you're going to be doing at the parks? When you're saying you're bringing programming to the parks, or will this be done by park staff?
The neighborhood parks, the vision right now is more of a recreational base, to where the music instructors are actual educated, experienced music instructors. Ours will be more recreational, like arts and crafts or soccer, a little game of soccer, or
So these might just be
scavenger
one-
hunts, or
like just a one-day event.
yes.
Okay.
For the complimentary ones and no charge ones, definitely a one-day event. If we start doing some paid programming, it might be, we'll have a mini soccer class or something out at the
Okay.
park for 4 Saturdays this month, and you can sign up for it or something, beginning lessons or something.
Yeah, really excellent idea, because then parents can probably often just walk their children over there. It's a great idea, giving more access to people.
Yeah, we gotta
So-
come up with some very focused marketing, like door hangers or something, so that it's just marketing for the local, like 1 mile radius type of thing. So.
I just love how innovative our parks are and how innovative your staff is, always meeting the needs of the community.
Thank you.
So if there's no further comments for Mrs. Callis, we'll go on to, probably Management Services is not giving us a report unless we have Mrs. Smith online. No? Okay. So General Manager?
Thank you. Thank you, Chair Cusworth and members of the board. I was blushing behind my mask, and I I'm very grateful for your kind remarks, and I do need to say that the CRP staff, my administrators and Aline first and foremost, but every single person they work with at CRPD are amazing. So we all do it together, from the board through a gym attendant, everybody all together, and it's a great place to be. So thank you for keeping me around. I do like it. In terms of mentioning anything, I did sort of, tease the board retreat and some of the strategic plan / board retreat discussion items in January. So kind of get your thinking caps on and thinking about the future. We are already live with our community conversation survey on our website. So, people can go on our website right now and take a very short 4-question survey. So we're just going to start really measuring community sentiment and what their interests and priorities are, because we really want to, get as in tune and aligned with the community as we possibly can, going into our big 60th anniversary celebration. So that's exciting. I was at a Crpd board meeting, I think, since we were last together. I'm losing track of time. I think, I was at my board meeting
You're
after
leaving
the
the
last.
next day.
Yeah, so at the Crpd board meeting, we got a little heads up on what is going on with the insurance market, and workers' comp's great because everybody's been home and not getting injured as often. The property is not as bad as we had feared, because we didn't have as bad a fire season. Even though you do hear about it, it hasn't been as big a property loss as they were starting to worry about. So property is starting to stabilize. The general liability, though, is getting really bad. And we're at the point where we may not be able to get cybersecurity insurance. It's going up 40% this year.
What
And
kind?
Wow.
cyber security. So loss from, a ransomware attack or something like that. So John, we're naked. We need really solid
Quick,
IT
cover us
defense
up.
mechanism. Yeah. Anyway, so that's kind of what I heard up there at Crpd, and what's going on with the insurance market. And then they were down here. I don't think Tom mentioned it, but Tom and Rochelle and basically everyone, Shelley, we did have a risk and safety assessment that Crpd does. We had that this week. And so that's actually kind of a lot of fun, because you have to get on your toes. Be on your toes. They give us a list of 80 things they're going to come and inspect, and documents they want to see and all that. So you got to kind of get ready for that. And we, I think, knocked it out of the park, so to speak. Tom took him to his favorite deli, so wined him and dined him. And with that, happy holidays and happy New Year, because our next board meeting won't be till January. So thanks. Oh, did you guys get that in your packet? They have that?
Yes.
Okay. Yes, thank you, Aline, for reminding me. We do have the memo for the Gratitude Circle nominations. So those nominations are people that the board have thrown out as possibilities over the years. So you guys have this sort of running list that we keep track of. This is nothing you need to act on tonight, but in the green packet, or
It's in the folder that.
in
went
that
on the
folder that
dais,
was there
yeah.
for you. It's just something for you to take home and think on. We are in the phase the next month or so looking for your ideas on who should be considered for the Gratitude Circle. So there's some names to get your juices flowing, but if you have other people, don't hesitate to include them. So we'll send out an email with the date we're looking to get this back by, but we'll give you a month or so to think of some folks so that we can honor them in May. And with that, I'm available for questions.
Are there any questions for Mr. Friedel? Okay, then we'll move on to directors' reports. Let's start with Director Huffer.
I closed my computer down, so I don't have my calendar. The only event that I specifically recall, because I can remember lunchtime. It was really nice lunch that the put on for all the staff. Food trucks were great. It was nice to chat with some folks that I knew from various centers. So that was a fun event. And I'm looking forward to Starlight Ball tomorrow night. So if it's gonna be outside, at least the weather hopefully will clear. Are you gonna have heaters out there?
Yeah, that, I thought
Oof.
not.
Yeah, there's a
There are heaters.
Yeah. I saw some.
Yeah, there's 12 heaters out there.
Oh, so we might survive after all. Okay, good. Other than that, I don't recall. It seems to me it's been fairly quiet Park District wide, with lots of other things going on, but that's all.
Okay, thank you, Director Hoover. Director Holt?
Well, I was also at the picnic, but that was really, it was nice to see because with this staff, whether, regardless of what they do for the district, I mean, from all the people who work at the parks. It was very nice and very good food. It was very, very nice, but it was very cold.
Thank you.
And I can't remember anything else.
Thank you, Director Nichols.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I can remind Chuck that we attended the State of the City luncheon together.
Oh, I
Yes.
went there too.
We also attended the city reorganizational city council meeting that evening together, along with our general manager. And I had to apologize to Chuck because I forgot to mention that he was standing behind me while I was giving the address. I was so wrapped up in following my script that I forgot that part. So sorry about that. Yeah, I just didn't do that part. Went to Patty Ricketts' retirement last night. That was a lot of fun. And I finally figured out why Borchard Park was such a success all the time. It's because of Patty Ricketts. Everyone was so complimentary of all of the things that she's done. Everybody goes, that's what makes Borchard Park. But I think it goes back to what we've said. It's the staff, and I think she's a representation of that. Obviously, she has a lot of years to build up what she's done. But again, that's why we have such successful programs, is the great staff that we have. And then again, the holiday party today. And I just wanted to mention, as I try to strike up a conversation with somebody that I hadn't met before. And today was Haley from Dos Vientos Park. And come to find out, she's another one that started as a volunteer. And now she's, on board. And I continue to hear that time and again, is either they started, kicking a soccer ball or doing something, and then alongside somebody, then they're a volunteer, and then they're part-time in the summer, and next thing you know, they're general manager or something like that. I'm not quite sure. But then it also reminded me that I too started as a field attendant. That was my first CRPD gig, was doing that. Then I graduated to softball referee, realizing that those co-ed teams are vicious, and I needed to go back to being the field attendant. So no, it wasn't that bad. It was a lot of fun. And the last thing I just want to say was I was noticing Scott back there dutifully managing our tech responsibilities, and realizing as his retirement is coming up here. I mentioned to him today that when we first started taking our kids at the time to the Waverly Center for the programs over there, the Kids Theater, Young Artists Ensemble, that I imagine Scott was probably just getting started back then, because that was, well, let's see, Rebecca was, so it was probably 30 years ago when we first started doing that. And now here Scott's coming up on his 35th year. Is that right? 35 years, Scott? Almost 36, but who's counting, right? But I just wanted to acknowledge Scott, who has done lots of work for us in so many ways, and yet he's still willing to contend with us for a couple of hours, just moving dials and things. So thank you, Scott, for your many years of service to the community and to the Park District. Talk about big shoes to fill. That's gonna be a tough one. So just wanted to acknowledge that while I see you back there. Thank you. We'll look forward to your party coming up here in a week or so. Thank you, Scott.
Thank you, Director Nichols. Director Lang.
Yes, and Director Holt didn't mention, but she and her husband Ed participated along with myself and Judy and our granddaughters in the City of Westlake Village Community Sing, representing
I
the,
thought we mentioned that last.
you didn't,
I can't keep up with them all.
all right.
Yeah.
And then
they,
I,
showed the picture of it.
and then I attended with Nichols and Huffer and Holt, too, I think the State of the City luncheon. And then I went to the CSDA meeting that evening, so I didn't make the city reorganization. And I've already had 2 MRCA meetings, and I've got another special one coming up next week. And Santa Monica Mountains Conservancy and Patty Rickard's event last night, and today's staff CRPD holiday picnic. So a full month for sure. And again, it just, to me, it shows the vitalization, the energy, the great things that CRPD does. A lot of things happening. We're not stagnant. And as I think I mentioned before, in year-end review, any park district would be just envious of what we accomplish. And again, as mentioned, and as we recognized our general manager for his effort, and our staff, administrators, it's such a great team. And thanks to Eileen for all that she does and keeping us in line. And look forward to 2022 under the leadership of Director Cusworth,
Well, thank you.
Chair not Cusworth. excuse me.
Well, thank you, Director Lang. If you were seeing Young Artist shows 30 years ago, you probably saw my daughters. So it's kind of interesting how when you've lived here for a long time, because that's when they were acting. And hopefully my granddaughter will be there someday because she's taking singing lessons at Maple Elementary. So maybe she'll sing as well as her mother does someday. I was at the ad hoc art committee with Director Holt, and I think that's another thing where you didn't really need one until you need one. And now when we're having situations come up where people want to have art and different things here, where we have a committee where we can be thinking about what kind of art we want to have in our community and how it's appropriate for our park. So, and I didn't go to a lot of those other things. I don't get good lunches yet, maybe in a couple of years. So when I retire. So with that, do we have any status reports or items for subsequent agendas? No. Any items from the public, John? Okay, so we're going to close this meeting and then open it again for an executive closed session. How does that go?
We actually do not have a need for closed session, so there is no closed session.
Okay.
Yes.
So,
I knew that.
so can I just close this meeting and hit the gavel? Is there a verbiage, Mr. Lang?
Just adjourn this meeting until our January 6th.
Okay, I adjourn this meeting until January 6th.
All right.
Righty.
That was
Wow.
fortunate.
My first gavel.
Rookie, no longer a rookie.